1, 2, 3, yeah! Baby! Sassy! Studley! Oh! Check the pecs! Man, I'm pretty! Do the monkey with me! Come on! Hey there, baby! Yeah, whatever.
Good night, every pony. Today we're going to be taking a look at Girls Johnny Bravo. It's been about 8 years since I last watched the anime and I don't remember much about it. To be honest, I didn't have much expectations going into this. I thought for sure this would end up being like Ma Barajo where I enjoyed it years ago, but now I don't. However, that didn't happen, and surprisingly, the anime is still not half bad. And I guess I should explain why that is. But before I do, let me just say that I'm sorry for the poor video quality.
Do I look like I know what a JPEG is? I just want a picture.
I couldn't find any HD uploads online, so I'm forced to use 480p rips, which is nasty. I even tried upscaling them in After Effects, which failed miserably. I exported one episode in 1080p, it took over 2 hours, and the quality didn't improve at all. Also, the video was almost 40 gigabytes, which is horrendous. Just to give you an idea of how bad that is, my MLP video is 23 gigabytes, and that's over 3 hours long. So yeah, After Effects fucking sucks. I'm never using it again. Anyway, that's my daily rant about Adobe. Now on to the video. It's Morbin time. So, we get introduced to our main character Yukinari, who's one of the biggest wimps in anime. He's so scared of girls that his body developed a rash which triggers whenever a girl touches him. Wow, what a pussy! Anyway, he goes home, gets Sherlock pwned by his hot mama friend Kyrie, but then Yuki wakes up in a bathroom with a nice lady named Miharu, and he acts like a little bitch. After that, Yuki realizes that his rash doesn't trigger when Miharu touches him because my name's Jeff. Miharu then tells him that he's on the planet Seiren where over 90% of its population is made up of women. Because of that, all the women want to fuck Yuki, so that's spicy goodness.
5 hours later.
Yuki then wants to go back home, so Miharu uses her special powers to send him back. However, when she does, she gets sent back as well, and that's how the first episode ends. Overall, it's a decent episode, although nothing great by any means. Yuki's weird rash thing as well as the planet Seiren are interesting concepts, but the series barely does anything with them. Instead, most of the series is just typical harem nonsense, which I don't have a problem with. For the first few episodes, multiple girls get introduced, however, not all of them are in love with Yuki, which is unique. Typically, every new girl that gets introduced is attracted to the main character, but Girls Bravo is different. Miharu, Kyrie, and Risa are the only ones who are in love with him. Koyomi, Tomoka, and everyone else aren't interested in Yuki romantically, so that's weird considering how many girls there are in the show. There is Miharu's sister, Maharu, but she's barely in the show, so I don't really count her.
Who are you supposed to be?
Check a carrot cake!
Anyway, there's barely any plot in the show besides the last few episodes, as well as some like episodes 5 and 6. In these episodes, Koyomi comes to Earth to take Miharu back to Seiren. Surprisingly, Miharu ends up going with her, but it's extremely obvious that she's going to come back at the end of the episode. Because of this, episode 6 ends up being one of the weakest ones since half of it is kinda boring. Everyone is just moping around because Miharu left, and again, it doesn't work because it's so obvious that she's going to come back. It's also a big tonal shift going from haha dumb harem to this, even though this is only the 6th episode. I'm not saying Girls Bravo can't try and be serious because while rare, the show does take itself seriously. For example, in season 2, there's an episode about Koyomi trying to find her father, which is pretty good. There's a good balance between serious moments as well as goofy funny ones, and overall this ends up being one of the show's stronger episodes. There's also episode 23, which takes itself pretty seriously and it works fairly well, but I'll get into that later. So yeah, the show barely has a plot and rarely tries to be serious, but usually when it does, guess it works to a certain extent. More than 90% of the show is just dumb harem nonsense, which again, I don't have a problem with. There are some really fun episodes like episode 12, which has the main cast switch bodies. I especially like how the characters' voices change since they're in someone else's body. For example, when Kazuharu is in Miharu's body, he uses Miharu's voice, which makes sense. I can't stand it when other shows do this but keep the characters' voices the same. If they're in someone else's body, then they should talk using their voice. I don't know why other shows manage to fuck this up so much. Maybe it's because it requires more effort from the voice actors since they're playing completely different characters. Then again, that's one of the best parts about these episodes since it's fun seeing and hearing these characters act and speak out of character. There's also the next episode, which has Kyrie fight some girls in an arena, which is pretty fun. It's nowhere near as amazing as the wrestling episode from HLP, but it's still legitness. Now, even though there are some solid episodes, there's also some not so good ones as well. A small handful of episodes are sorta meh, and there's even a couple bad ones too. For example, episode 19 has the cast play out a movie that Kazuharu made, however you don't find out it's a movie until the very end of it. Most of it is sorta boring and it feels way too different compared to every other episode. All of the characters are out of character, but not in a good or fun way. It's not a terrible episode, but clearly one of the worst. There is, however, episode 15, which is really boring and by far the worst episode. It centers around a douchebag named Mamoru who's obsessed with keeping the school clean for some reason. I hate him, he's very annoying, unfunny, and I don't understand why this episode exists at all. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a filler or anime original episode, but I guess I'll find out later. Either way, it's so bizarre seeing some random new character be the main focus for an entire episode, especially since he's barely in the show after this. It's pretty shit, but I've definitely seen worse. Anyway, this leads me to my biggest problem with the anime, which is that it's inconsistent. Some episodes are pretty fun, decent, but also not so great. Even in some episodes that are mostly good, there are still moments that are clearly weaker. For example, there's episode 11 where the main cast is at a hot spring. The first third of the episode is sort of meh, but then the rest of it is pretty good. Kazuharu has a ping pong match with Kyrie and then Koyomi, which is epic. So yeah, not every episode is good, and not every moment and scene are good either. There were times where I was bored and was waiting for the episode to end, but that only happened a few times. Altogether, the anime is decently fun, but its consistency is clearly an issue. Obviously, most shows have episodes that stand out for either being strong or weak. For example, in Mermaid, there's a couple episodes that are just okay, but every other episode is at worst really damn good. In Girls Bravo, the quality is a bit messy, but again, it's overall decent.
Throwing flashbang.
Anyway, I think that brings us to the last couple episodes. In the second half of season 2, we get some foreshadowing of some mean girls from Seiren who want Miharu because of her special power. Although nothing actually happens until the end of episode 22, where one of them brings Miharu back to Seiren. Now that Miharu left, everyone is sad and it's basically a rehash of episode 6 except done right. It was too early to do the whole main girl leaves / gets kidnapped bit before, but here it works. By now I actually care enough for these characters, so I want to see them rescue Miharu and bring her back. Obviously they go to Seiren to save her, but the way they do it is sorta dumb. So you know how Miharu has that special power that allows her to open a portal to Earth? Well, although rare, other girls on Seiren have this power too, and one of them is Koyomi's mother. Because Miharu isn't there, and because the mean girls took Koyomi's pearls or whatever the hell they are, they can't go back to Seiren. So Miharu tells Koyomi that because her mother has this special power, that means that she most likely has it too. Koyomi then summons the power of God in anime, and then she opens the portal because... The last episode is definitely one of the anime's strongest. We finally get to see more of Seiren, every character gets some good moments, and there's even some well-animated fight scenes for some reason. Also, despite being very action-oriented, this episode manages to have a really good balance between dumb comedy and somewhat serious moments. It'll cut from a fight scene to the mean girl talking about how she wants to make Seiren a woman ethno-state, which is really funny and stupid. I've said this plenty of times before, but this is something that's not easy to do at all. So it's weird that a show like Girls Bravo is able to do this where others like DxD can't.
Back at it again at Krispy Kreme.
Anyway, Yuki tells the mean girl that it's okay to be gay, she sets Miharu free, and then they all live happily ever after. So yeah, that was the last episode, and it was not half bad. I know this isn't a great way to end the series, but as an anime finale, I think it's perfectly fine. Although it's technically a romance, barely anything romantic happens between Miharu and Yuki. Because of that, I don't really mind that there wasn't any closure for the two of them. Would it have been nice if the two of them kissed or confessed their feelings to each other? Yes, but again, I don't mind since I mainly view the series as a slice of life harem comedy. The only dumb thing about these last few episodes is Yuki's rash. In episode 22, his rash goes away, but then at the end of the last episode, it's back because I don't fucking know. But besides that, this is a good way to end the anime. I can't complain that much. So with that, I think it's time to move on to its characters. Just like its episodes, Girls Bravo's cast is similarly weird and inconsistent. There are some really fun characters in here, but there are also ones that are just sort of there. Like always, let's start off with Yuki, who's really bad. Yuki is a wimp. In fact, he's one of the biggest losers in any harem anime. Because he's short and weak, he's been bullied by girls for most of his life. This caused him to develop a rash which triggers whenever a girl touches him. Yeah, so he's that big of a pussy that he developed a fucking rash on his body. At first, I thought Yuki wasn't too bad since I thought he was born with his rash as an illness or something. But then I rewatched some scenes and realized he developed it because he's just a little bitch. Jesus Christ, man, don't be a pushover. If you're getting bullied, then tell them to fuck off. Stop running away, being scared, and do something about it.
No, be assertive.
Besides Yuki, there's Kazuharu, who is by far the best part of the show. I'm not exaggerating when I say this, but he hard carries the show. There is never a dull moment when he's on screen. Whenever he's not around, the show ranges from being a bit on the boring side to just decent. But as soon as he shows up, I get a smile on my face. I know I'm a sucker for perverts and all, but he's without a doubt one of the best anime perverts. He's extremely over the top, he's fun, he's hilarious, and his voice is fantastic. Also, similarly to Yuki, he has the same type of rash as him, except that it's caused by men touching him. That just shows how much of a pervert he actually is, since he doesn't want any guy touching him. Hell, I would even go as far as to say that if he was only half as entertaining as he is, then I don't think I would overall like the series. Yes, I'm not kidding. That's how great Kazuharu is. He actually steals and carries the entire show. There are other characters that I like, but still, he's easily my favorite. And speaking of other characters, that leads me to the next section of the video, aka the Waifu Wars. Here, I officially rank each girl in the series from worst to greatest. It's coming in shitting time.
Go to hell!
Kirie Kojima. Kirie is worst girl, and that's because she's a bully. She bullies Yuki and beats the shit out of him because she's an asshole. She likes him, but even so, she still constantly abuses him, so yeah. I like seeing her suplex people and tell them to go to hell, especially when it's on Kazuharu. I know I called the anime Girls Johnny Bravo and made the thumbnail based off it too, but that's literally what the series is like sometimes. But besides that, she's okay, just too bitchy for my liking. Daddy! Koyomi Nanaka. Koyomi is a shy girl that is afraid of men. She works for an association that brings back girls who go to Earth without permission. She also wants to find her father because he left her. I could make a racist joke here, but I'm not going to. Miharu Kaneka. Miharu, aka Bowling Ball Head, is the main heroine of the show, and she's good. She's pretty funny, she lacks common sense, and the banana scene with her in episode 2 was great. She loves to eat, so I'd like to see her do a mukbang with avocado nikocado.
I'm gay.
Kosame. Kosame is one of Risa's assistants, and she's pretty fun. The reason she's so high is simple. She's a lesbian, and that's hot. She wants to drink the milk out of Kirie's breasts, so that's epic. She's super duper strong and also sexy too.
P-E-D-O.
Tomoka Jude. Now hold up just 1 second. Before you throw me in with EDP, the Bude, Onision, and all those other pedophiles, let me explain myself. The reason Tomoka is so high is because I'm rating her as a character, not a waifu. She's really funny, and just like Kazuharu, there's almost never a dull moment when she's on screen. She can be an ass at times, she's very childish, and yeah, she's really fun. I can see if some people find her annoying, especially her voice, but I think it's great. Risa Fukuyama. Here at the numero 1 spot is Kazuharu's little sister, Risa. Just like her brother, she's over the top and wants to fuck Yuki's brains out. And the only reason she wants to is because her radio told her that Yuki was her soulmate, which is really dumb but funny. Risa's good, but I wish we got to see more of her. Most of the other girls get more screen time than her, which sucks since she's my favorite. For 2004 and 5, Girls Bravo doesn't look half bad. In fact, it actually looks good. Besides a couple moments, there's nothing that'll make you go,
hey, that's pretty good.
But yeah, in terms of animation, the series looks surprisingly good. Character designs are good too, although some of them can be seen off model at times. Not every scene and every episode looks solid, but for the most part, it's a good looking show. Another surprise with the anime is that its soundtrack is actually good too. There's some really solid tracks in here that I'll listen to again, and the other tracks are still decent. I've even been using some of them throughout the video. Its first opening and ending themes I enjoy quite a bit, but season 2's themes weren't nearly as good. Besides its soundtrack, there's its English dub, and oh boy, it's fucking great. A lot of the actors are giving strong performances, some clearly more than others. Kazuharu's actor, Liam O'Brien, is giving it his A game. I mostly recognize him as Gaara and Tenma from Monster, which are both very serious characters. So it's great to see him do something entirely different by playing Kazuharu, who's the complete opposite of them. Here, just listen to some of these clips.
Of all the guys at Mizuno High School, I am easily the best looking.
Hey, Fukuyama!
Are you stupid? Ever since I made the mistake of trying that nasty-ass bento you brought me, I've been barfing non-stop! You must, it is your sexual destiny!
Yup, those are great, and there's plenty of other great lines and deliveries from others too. I especially love these ones.
Hey, what do you retards think you're looking at?
Have you tried looking for her in the park, you retard?
Okay, the retarded-looking blonde guy down in the front!
Well, that was Girls Johnny Bravo, and surprisingly, it wasn't too bad. There's some great characters, the dub kicks ass, it's pretty funny, and it even looks and sounds good too. However, the show is unfortunately inconsistent in terms of quality. Some episodes and scenes aren't good, and even when the show is at its best, it's nothing amazing by any means. That being said, although the show is a bit of a mixed bag, I think it's worth a light recommendation. And that's why I'm giving the anime a 6.34 out of 10.
We weren't done watching soccer yet! My favorite actor is on that variety show today, and it's on right now! Ah, when we turn on the TV...
Now that was just the anime, since now I'll be taking a look at the manga. Back in 2017, a few years after I watched the anime, I decided to check out the manga. However, I could only stomach about 5 chapters before I gave up, got bored, dropped it, and gave it a 3 out of 10. That's kinda why I went into the anime not expecting to like it, since I really didn't like what I read of the manga. Then again, maybe I was too harsh on the manga, or maybe the anime is just a lot better. But there's only one way to find out. Well, I read the manga, and guess what? I really don't like the manga. It was a big waste of my time. I didn't have much expectations going into it, but still, it was even worse than I thought it'd be. My main problem is that it's very boring, which is due to it being different from the anime. And when I mean different, I mean very different. There's only a couple chapters that I'd say the anime faithfully adapted, such as chapters 1, 8, 11, and 12. There's still some differences between them, but for the most part, I'd I'd say the anime adapted these chapters. Every other episode in the anime was more so an inspiration from the manga rather than an adaptation. But I don't need to tell you that because the manga even says this itself. On all the volume covers, it says the manga that inspired the anime, not the manga that the anime adapted. So yes, Girls Bravo's manga is basically a repeat of My Bride is a Mermaid. Mermaid's anime is drastically different from its manga, and it definitely isn't a faithful adaptation. There are some chapters that are faithful, but most of them aren't. The anime basically took concepts and ideas, expanded upon them, rewrote them, and made some big changes. And what we got was an amazing show. It's still one of my all-time favorites. If you want to hear my full thoughts on it, you can watch my hour-long review on Rumble. Anyway, Girls Bravo did this as well, although to a lesser success. Like I said, the anime is overall alright, but it's clearly leagues better than the manga. It may be inconsistent, but at least it has some very fun characters, a great dub, and can also be pretty funny at times. The manga isn't like this though. It is consistent, however, it's consistently bad and boring. Besides a few decent chapters, every other one was a chore to read through. The manga is lifeless, repetitive, generic, and again, very boring. Some of its characters were at best just okay, which is weird because all the characters are nearly identical to how they are in the anime. However, the biggest change or drop in quality is Kazuharu himself, who, I remind you, was sort of the anime's saving grace. In the manga, Kazuharu is kinda mediocre and just your typical perverted harem side character. He got a couple chuckles out of me, but that's horrendous compared to how he was in the anime. There, I always had a smile on my face whenever he was on screen. One of the biggest reasons why he's worse in the manga is because of the lack of voice acting, which I know is a stupid thing to say. Obviously, there's nothing the manga could have done about this, but that just goes to show how much the dub carried the anime as well as the series. Kazuharu's voice was fantastic, and his actor really brought the character to life. The same goes for others like Tomoko, who I also like considerably less in the manga. However, the lack of voices isn't the only reason why these characters are notably worse. One of the biggest differences in the manga is the absence of a lot of small details that were in the anime. For example, there's this funny joke in the first episode where Miharu copies Yuki by putting her hands over her head. She doesn't know why he's doing it and just thinks it's something everyone else does, which is why she does it too. Miharu being oblivious to normal everyday things is something the anime expanded upon, which is one reason why I like her more there than in the manga. Some chapters show this side of her, such as chapter 9+10, which is one of my favorites. It's April Fool's. As I was saying, it's April Fool's and Miharu thinks the whole point of it is to lie and say the opposite of what you really mean. It's a decent chapter and I wish the rest of the manga was as enjoyable as this one. There's also this scene in episode 2 where she's sucking off and eating bananas for 2 full minutes, which is great. It's so over the top, stupid, and it's one of the most memorable parts of the anime. However, in the manga, this is completely different and it sucks. Instead of bananas, Miharu eats apples. There's no ichi at all, and it only makes up a bit more than 1 page. There's also this one short scene in episode 4 that I like a lot. Kazuharu wakes up, his maid Lilica goes over to him, and he says this.
Why are you talking to me?
She then tells him that his friends are here to see him, to which he responds by saying this.
It's nothing to brag about, but I don't really have friends.
This small scene shows how much of an asshole Kazuharu truly is. First, there's him asking Lilica why she's talking to him, which just shows how little he thinks of her as a person. Then there's his response to finding out that his friends are over. He casually says, I don't think I have friends, which he doesn't care about either. These are such small things that I really like because they help shape Kazuharu as a giant douchebag. However, in the manga, this is notably different. Lilica goes to Kazuharu, tells him that his friends are over, and he responds by saying, my friends? Did they get the wrong address? He also says quietly, I'm not proud of it, but I have no friends. Then he immediately stops caring and moves on. It's not bad, and I get the joke the author was going for, but it lacks those small crucial details that were in the anime which made it work there. I understand that the scene itself is notably different different compared to the anime. Kazuharu just woke up in the anime and is expecting to see Miharu at his house. However, here he just got home and doesn't know that Kirie, Koyomi, and Miharu were in his house. But it's not just that which makes the manga's telling so much worse. This small line of dialogue of him saying, "I'm not proud of it, but I have no friends," really sets us apart from the anime. This shows that Kazuharu isn't a complete shithead since he actually wouldn't mind having friends. Again, it's such a very minor detail, but it separates Kazuharu from his anime's counterpart who's much more of an asshole. But that's at least how I interpreted this one-page scene. Maybe I'm looking too much into this. Who knows?
I'm Glenn Quagmire.
Now the reason I went over this one very minor scene is because the manga is filled with changes and differences like this. I'm not exaggerating when I say I could easily spend over 30 minutes going over every single difference between the anime and the manga, but I'm not going to do that because it'd just be redundant and I also don't feel like wasting all that time. Anyway, scenes and jokes that worked in the anime are just like this. Some of them aren't bad, but they're still a lot weaker. The manga just isn't funny because it's not well written. Most of its characters aren't deep or very interesting. And again, the anime's cast is pretty similar to the manga, but small details like the ones I just went over helped develop them and made them more likable. In the manga, moments like those are absent, and that's because there's not much to the manga since it's very simple and basic and not in a good way. Nearly every single chapter is made up of one short story. Stories will typically start and end within the same chapter except for a few, and this is one of my biggest problems with the manga. Just like its characters and writing, its stories aren't developed or interesting enough for me to care. Each chapter is about 24 pages, which although not super short, clearly isn't long either. None of the concepts get the time they need to develop and become interesting. For example, one of the few chapters that I sort of liked was chapter 16 where Kirie goes into a mirror where everyone is the opposite of themselves. It's not a great or original chapter by any means, but it was sort of fun to see the cast be completely different. I think this would have made for a fun few chapter arc, but nope, it's just one. There's also chapter 61 where Yuki turns back to being a kindergartner, which was also okay. Again, the idea is interesting and fun, but it's just one short chapter. There's also other ones that inspired the anime, such as chapter 9 where Kazuharu and Yuki switch bodies. On its own, this chapter is fine, I guess, but it's shit compared to the anime. This was probably the best episode, and that's because of how chaotic and fun it was. By the end of it, everyone had switched bodies. Kazuharu was in Miharu's body, Kirie was in Kazuharu's body, and Yukinari was in Kirie's body. It was great. The anime expanded upon this chapter and made it very memorable. However, the manga is just so dull and plain compared to it.
I'm Glenn Quagmire.
But yeah, I think you get why I really don't like the manga and find it boring. Although some chapters might be okay, they're still shit compared to the anime. And even then, there are some chapters that were never inspired by the anime, but are still just decent at best. Now, I guess it's time to bring up a question you might have. Is there anything the manga does or have that's better than the anime? To answer that question,
Yes.
yes there is, and it's chapters 11 and 12 where Koyomi comes to Earth and takes Miharu back to Seirin. It's a bit better than the anime because it's shorter to read through, it's quicker, and that's literally it. Yes, that is the only thing that the manga does better than the anime, and it's so tiny that it doesn't even matter.
I'm Glenn Quagmire.
Another thing worth bringing up real quick is its art. While the anime's art and animation wasn't anything amazing, it still was surprisingly good and above average. As for the manga, I'd say the art is overall good. The first few volumes are clearly weaker than the rest, especially the first couple chapters, but it does improve as the series goes on, and I do think it overall looks good. Characters are usually well drawn, panel layout isn't half bad, and I don't have much to complain about besides it being a bit inconsistent at times.
I'm Glenn Quagmire.
We're almost done, but before I get to the last couple chapters, there's one thing I want to mention that really pissed me off. Remember the trash man from the anime who I couldn't stand? Well, guess what? He's in the manga too. So it annoys me that the anime included him instead of other chapters that would have made for much more enjoyable episodes. But that's not so bad, right? He's better in the manga since his chapter is a lot shorter than a full 20-minute episode, right?
Wrong.
So here's the funny thing about this. He gets 3 full chapters. Yeah, he gets 3 fucking chapters.
What the
fuck?
You're telling me that the one thing the manga decided to develop and spend multiple chapters on was this motherfucker. While not a lot, there are clearly other more fun and interesting concepts that I would have liked to have seen more chapters on. But no, instead we get 3 goddamn chapters on the trash man. Go fuck yourself, Girls Bravo. I fucking hate you. Anyway, in chapter 30, it's also revealed that Kazuharu is a pedophile. With that, let's get on with the ending, and oh god. It sucks. So at the end of chapter 66, Miharu passes out, so she goes back to Seiren to get better. But when she does, she wants to go back to Earth, but her sister tells her no. That's because some liberal on Seiren wants to marry her. So they have a wedding, everyone comes to save her, and guess what? They do, and that's it. It really feels like the writer wrote this out of his ass at the last second. I don't know if the manga got cancelled or not, but still, it's so underwhelming, short, and generic. I said this earlier, but I enjoyed the whole rescue the main heroine trope in harems. Sure, they're cliche, but you can have fun with them. The anime did this well, not great, but certainly well. Although barely, there was at least some foreshadowing for it. The anime also had 2 full episodes dedicated to this, and again, more time, more development, the idea was expanded upon, etc. Here it's just too short, too generic, not fun, and I get nothing out of it. Yuki tells Miharu that he wants to be with her forever, and that's it. Also, Miharu ends up with the liberal who tried to marry Miharu, which doesn't make any sense at all. She's desperate for men, but not that desperate. She rejected Kazuharu, so why did she decide to marry him? I don't know, and I don't care either.
I'm Glenn Quagmire.
There's also a bonus chapter titled Another Act, which takes place after the manga. It's better than most of the chapters, but that's really not saying much. I had some expectations for it because I heard that Miharu and Yuki were married now, but that's not true. They're clearly in a relationship, but barely any time has passed from the last chapter, so they aren't married. Also, Mao's description says this: I thought this meant Kirie would end up with Kazuharu, which would be really weird, but at least interesting, but no, she doesn't. Nothing comes from this chapter, but still, it was sort of fun to see Kirie and Kazuharu dick around for a short time. But anyway, yeah, that's the manga. It's shit. The anime is a lot better. Don't waste your time with it. And that's why I'm giving the manga a 3.54 out of 10. Well, that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, you can leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, or even support me on Patreon. Link down below. Also, I have no idea when this will be out, but here's a quick channel update. I recently started a full-time job and I work up to 50 hours a week now. So that means I have a lot less time to work on videos like this. So if you're wondering why uploads are slower than usual, that's mainly why. Another reason is because I've been working on a very long video, which I hope to release sometime in early fall. So yeah, sorry for the lack of uploads. I've been busy with stuff and can't do much about it. Anyway, peace out, gamers.
Okay then.